Let's talk about workplace conflict. We've all been there, right? But what if you had a toolkit, a set of go-to strategies to handle disagreements before they get, well, messy? Today, we're diving into something called alternative dispute resolution, or ADR, to give you exactly that. You know how it goes. It starts with a simple misunderstanding about a project, maybe a personality clash or a debate over who was supposed to do what. It seems small, but if you don't handle it the right way, it can blow up. And suddenly, it's not just affecting the two people involved, it's dragging down the whole team. And the fallout goes way beyond just feeling tense at your desk. Seriously, unresolved conflict is a huge drain on everything. It just eats up precious time that you should be spending on actual work. It can spiral into expensive legal fights, and worst of all, it can totally wreck important professional relationships, sometimes for good. Now, you might think, okay, I'll just go the official legal route. But here's the thing. When a company has a policy called forced arbitration, the deck can be stacked against you. The American Association for Justice put out this quote that just stops you in your tracks. You are literally more likely to be struck by lightning. That's why understanding all your options is so important. And if you want a hard number on that, here it is. In 2020, the success rate for consumers in those closed cases was a tiny 4.1%. That's it. This isn't to say arbitration is always a bad thing, not at all. But it shows that the default formal path isn't some magic bullet. We need a better toolkit. So let's talk about those other options. They all fall under this big umbrella called alternative dispute resolution. Think of it as a whole spectrum of ways to solve conflicts, often without ever having to set foot in a courtroom. The best way to think about this is like a ladder of escalation, or a continuum. See, on one end, you've got negotiation. It's super informal and you have the most control. But as you move down the line, through mediation, then arbitration, and finally to a lawsuit, the whole process gets more formal, and you start handing over control of the final decision to someone else. Okay, let's start at the very beginning of that continuum. The first and most direct tool you have in your kit is just good old-fashioned negotiation. This is your chance to solve the problem directly with the other person. So what is it, really? It's just a direct conversation where you're trying to find a solution together. The absolute key word here is control. When you're negotiating, it's just you and the other person. You two call the shots, you set the pace, and you're the ones who decide what the final agreement looks like. But here's the secret. Not all negotiation is the same. Most of us get stuck in what's called positional bargaining. You know, I want this, and, well, I want that. It becomes a tug of war. A much better way to do it is something called principled negotiation. It completely flips the script from a fight to a shared problem-solving project. And it's built on 4 core ideas. First, you have to separate the people from the problem. It's not about them, it's about the issue. Second, dig deeper. Don't just focus on what they say they want. Figure out why they want it. Then you can start brainstorming creative solutions where you both win. And finally, base your final decision on fair, objective standards, not just who can push the hardest. There's this perfect example of what happens when you fail at that first step. 2 employees, Valerie and Kathy, were in this massive feud. When their manager tried to help, they didn't talk about the actual work issue. Nope, they just started attacking each other personally. They were so stuck on the people part, they couldn't even see the problem anymore. Okay, but what if talking it out directly just doesn't work? What if you're at a stalemate? That's when you climb to the next rung on our ladder. You call in a neutral third party for mediation. And that's mediation. This isn't about giving up. It's about getting some help to have a better, more productive conversation. The mediator is like a referee. They're there to make sure the process stays fair and on track. So a mediator doesn't make the decision for you. They are not a judge. Their whole job is to guide the conversation, maybe help you see the issue from a new angle, and create a space where you can both find some common ground and build your own solution. And honestly, this is the real magic of mediation. Even with another person in the room, the power, the self-determination is still 100% with you and the other party. You can't be forced to agree to anything. A deal only happens if you both feel it's the right solution. You are still in the driver's seat. But what if even that facilitated talk hits a brick wall? Well, then you move further down the continuum to arbitration. And this is where the entire power dynamic changes. Arbitration is a totally different ballgame. You're not bringing in a helper anymore. You're essentially bringing in a private judge.
You are now asking someone to listen to both sides of the story and make the final call for you.
The most important words here are empowered to render a final decision. See, unlike a mediator, an arbitrator listens to all the arguments and evidence, and then they decide who wins. And that decision can be just as legally binding as if a judge in a courtroom made it.
So let's put them side by side. It's pretty stark. In mediation, you decide, you have high control, and the result is something you agreed to. In arbitration, the arbitrator decides, your control is low, and the decision is imposed on you. It's a huge trade-off. You get a guaranteed ending, but you give up your power to write that ending yourself.
So, now we have our three main tools in the ADR toolkit: negotiation, mediation, and arbitration. So how on earth do you choose the right one? Well, it all boils down to what you value most: control, cost, speed, or just getting a final answer.
And this toolkit is constantly evolving, which is cool. There are now hybrid options like MeetArb, where you start by mediating, but if you can't agree, it automatically switches to arbitration. And there's also online dispute resolution, or ODR, which moves the whole process online, making it way more accessible for everyone.
This chart really pulls it all together. Look, if you want maximum control and you want to keep things fast and cheap, you start with negotiation. If you need a little help but still want to make the final call yourself, mediation is perfect. But if you absolutely need a final binding decision and you're okay with giving up control to get it, then arbitration is your path.
At the end of the day, just knowing this continuum exists gives you so much power. Instead of letting a conflict either simmer forever or just explode, you have a set of smart, strategic tools you can use. So the next time you're in a disagreement at work, you can take a breath and ask yourself, okay, which tool is right for this job?